It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe today. We begin here in Nigeria, where the federal government on Tuesday broke its silence over the call for the sack of service chiefs, saying in quotes, "This is not the right time to do so." Now, the secretary to the government of the Federation, the SGF, Boss Mustapha, who disclosed this to journalists in Abuja, criticizing those mounting pressure on the government to sack the heads of security agencies. And according to him, there are processes to be followed if such a step must be taken, saying that Nigerians must be on the same page with the government if the battle against insecurity must be won. Now, he also said in quotes that we are in a very difficult time now. We need everybody to be on board. We need synergy with the intelligence community within the military formations that will help us fight this war. When we begin to create cracks and divisions, who will be the beneficiaries? The adversaries are the ones that are going to exploit those deficiencies and further the cause of destabilizing the nation, end quote. Now, Doctor, there's a lot to unpack here. Of course, the front page of this Day Today basically says it all, but what's your take?
Well, I mean, this subject has been, a matter of debate and controversy among Nigerians for quite a while.
Yeah.
And we have many groups that have also waded into the controversy, including the Ohanese, including the Afenifere, and other socio-political and cultural groups across the country, and even a body like the Christian Association of Nigeria. And also, voices of reason within the Nigerian community, including senior lawyers and statesmen, have also expressed concern that the service chiefs should be relieved of their appointments, of their assignments. And the source of that concern is simply because of the growing insecurity in Nigeria and the convention by many people that maybe perhaps there is a problem of leadership within the military hierarchy, and that these service chiefs who were appointed by President Buhari in 2015 and whose appointments were renewed in 2018 have not been able to make the significant difference in terms of technically defeating or decimating or getting, putting an end to the scourge of insurgency and terrorism. So those people who are saying they should be removed, they are making a comment on what they consider to be their performance. But, we've had many guests on this program on the same issue, and we also had the opportunity to talk to the Chief of Army Staff.
Yeah.
And if you put all the feedback that we've been getting together, there are people who are also at the same time of the strong opinion that, look, it's not just about change of personnel, that you may change the service chiefs, but what of all other issues that are involved, about equipment, about welfare, about, infrastructure, about the right level of commitment at all levels, both government and within affected Nigerian communities. And people say, so removing certain individuals will not solve the problem. The counter-argument to that is people saying, well, many of these service chiefs already, have concluded their tenure in terms of a number of years in service. Some of them also have even exceeded the age of retirement, and that the president cannot continue to keep them. And it was for this reason that Femi Falana, SAN, argued that retaining the service chiefs is an illegal thing to do in the light of the terms and conditions of service for military personnel. But the front page story of this day that you referred to today, more or less debunks what Falana, had said.
That's what I was going to say.
Because it points out that even under the same, document for military personnel, the terms and conditions of service, that, look, the president has a right to extend the tenure of service chiefs, and there is nothing illegal about that. But even beyond what is quoted...
Doctor, it also says irrespective of age and length of service.
Yes, and the principle of that is that, look, the president is commander-in-chief of the armed forces, is head of state, is also head of government.
Yeah.
And the Nigerian Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, is very liberal in terms of giving him powers to delegate authority and to hire and fire and to appoint whoever he deems fit to help him deliver on the mandate that the Nigerian people have given him. So even if you go to court, beyond the terms and conditions of service, the Constitution itself gives the president liberal powers in this regard. So the issue, of course, at the end of the day, is not about what is legal and what is illegal. What is important, what Nigerians want, is security, safety of lives and property. They want progress in tackling the challenge. And maybe that's why the Secretary to the Government of the Federation was saying that we need all hands on deck and that we need cooperation. And, it's not about scapegoating people. It's about working together to move Nigeria forward and make this country safe for everyone. Absolutely. And security and welfare, of course, being the primary objective of governance, of government. Then, of course, that should be something that is of interest, should be of interest to everybody. Beyond,
exactly.
Identifying scapegoats.
Exactly. What the SGF said is also what the Chief of Army Staff said when we interviewed him, when he said this is a collective effort that's going to take all hands on deck, all stakeholders coming together, that we can't fight this alone. But the other question here, Doctor, as well, I guess also has to do with the fact that, yes, it's written into law, but in Section 11, subsection 8 of that same handbook that we're referring to now, it says that a service chief has a tenure of 2 years. Of course, then the commander-in-chief has the right to then renew that for another 2 years. So I guess it's more of the outlook of, shouldn't that just be what's done, regardless of the fact that, yes, you can hold them on, which is still not a strong argument in front of the law. But do you think that's then an argument of, like, the morality of it versus the law? Well,
I mean, Femi Falana, SAN, has said that, you will go to court to test it. I'm all for testing the law, because unless you test the law, you really cannot have a proper interpretation of it.
Exactly.
But the other leg of it, of course, is that this is not about morality. I mean, it's not as if the service chiefs that are there, it's not as if they're
immoral.
They are originally carpenters.
They
are professionals doing the work, that they have chosen as their lifetime career. But the thing again is about the powers of the president. To retain people, to recruit people, to appoint persons that he thinks will be, the best to deliver. And to the extent that he has powers under the law to do this, then, of course, there is no question.
Exactly.
Then we can hold him accountable and say, Commander-in-Chief, we need the government to do more. That is a legitimate concern that Nigerians can express.
And speaking of that, let's take another story. Now, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has stated that with the several reforms by his administration, all government financial transactions will be done in the open. Now, according to the presidential spokesman Garba Shehu, President Buhari gave the assurance in Kaduna at the passing out parade of Detective Inspector Course 5 participants of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Now, he said various national reforms and collective efforts as well with international organizations are designed to strengthen anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria. Buhari noted that his administration's war against corruption has attracted international endorsements. So it's good to see the president speaking on this matter of transparency, and that's also quite a serious call that he put out about financial transactions being done in the open. Doctor?
Well, the president also talked about the application of digital platforms, information technology, to make government transactions even more transparent. But it's not as if it's just announcing this. The reform in terms of transparency and accountability, or if you like, open governance, has been in place since the Obasanjo administration in 1999. You will recall that it was that administration that first started by making public, financial disbursements, particularly to states and local councils, to allow people, Nigerians, to be able to ask questions about expenditures. And over the year, successive administrations have introduced all kinds of measures. They've retained it. But what we have found under President Buhari is a restatement of government's commitment and certain policy steps that have been taken. You have the single treasury account, which was, retained by this administration. You have the bank verification number, which has also been retained. You have executive order number 6, which is supposed to check illicit financial flows. And you have the ease of doing business reforms that government has introduced. And even under this administration, NATI, that is the Extractive Industry Transparency Industry, has also taken steps to insist on transparency in transactions, particularly in terms of ownership in the oil and gas industry. So it's a good thing to see that government intends to do more, because transparency is tied to accountability, is tied to good governance.
Absolutely, Doctor. And on that note, let's take a quick commercial break. And when we're back, we'll be joined by Rota Sadiri with the business news. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Arise business analyst Rota Saduri joins us now for the latest headlines. Not good news, increase in inflation.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rota.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, so you're right, Leila. So inflation figures for January were released yesterday by the Bureau of Statistics. And as you said, they've been climbing. So we're up from 11.98% year-on-year inflation in December to 12.13% in January. And this was kind of ahead of analysts' expectations somewhere. But most analysts were in the 12% region, but some were thinking 12.03, 12.01. And the main driver of the inflation was food. We continue to see food being the core driver of inflation figures. Cereals, meat, fish, and so on and so forth. And this pretty much has ties to the border closure. So also oil and fats, potatoes, yam, and other tubers as well were part of the where we saw the highest increase that drove headline inflation figures. The food sub-index, 14.85% year-on-year, up from 14.67 in December. Month-on-month figures as well for headline and the food sub-index were also high as well. Core sub-index, which takes out volatile food products, also was measured at 9.35 year-on-year from 9.33. We saw an increase there, mostly driven by cleaning, repair, hire clothing, hairdressing, garments, vehicle spare parts. That one is tied to our roads. The more damage you suffer on your vehicle, then you're going to be seeing more fixings taking place. The key thing here, though, as far as the economic indicators are concerned, is that Nigerians, the bulk of what we spend is on food. Right? You also have to look at the impact on investments as well. I remember with the last conversation we had with Tundu, we're talking about how with higher inflation, your real rate of return is lower with where bonds are, treasury bills, fixed deposits, and so on and so forth. So, the border closure is still tied to this. That happened in August of last year. We're now in February now. This has continued to play out. And analysts are saying that we're looking at having double-digit inflation for possibly the rest of this year. Keep in mind, the CBN's inflation target was in single digits. And I don't think we're going to see that moving forward. Outside of inflation, there's also the IMF downgrade of Nigeria's GDP growth for 2020. This has been linked to the coronavirus and the impact that it's had on oil prices, which is Nigeria's chief revenue earner. They've also talked about our fiscal deficits, and they also mentioned inflation increasing as well, and Nigeria's need to also put up buffers that can be able to allow it to absorb exogenous shocks like what we're seeing with what's going on with the coronavirus and oil prices. So all in all, not very, encouraging figures coming out between inflation and where we're seeing our GDP growth. But, it is what it is as far as the nation is concerned.
Well, even with the projection of GDP growth at 2.5%,
down to
originally,
2%. Yes, right.
Originally by IMF, which was even more optimistic than the estimate by the projection by the World Bank. What we know is that, many economists insist that even when we talk about 2.5%, 2.4%, not to now even talk of 2%, that really the economy is not growing. When you look at the growth rate that we've been talking about relative to our population growth, and for the Nigerian economy to wake up and move, you will need double-digit growth rate.
Correct.
But as for inflation, which the IMF pointed to and which the Bureau of Statistics says is now at a 21-month all-high.
Yes.
Either month-on-month or year-on-year, or even rural and urban inflation.
Right.
What I don't know with regard to that is whether the impact is more in the northern part of the country or in the southern part of the country, and what accounts for that.
Sokoto is the highest. It's actually higher in the northern part.
What is clear is that, there will be a sharp drop in purchasing power,
Correct.
particularly for persons who have fixed income.
Yes.
And then even for people who do not have fixed income, who have investments, there is low investment yield.
Right.
Okay, so it's a very difficult situation. But in response to what the IMF came up with, downgrading us to 2% projection of the GDP growth, they talked about the need to refocus, to re-strategize. But I think on the side of government, we need to note that perhaps these challenges, these external shocks, were anticipated.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the CBN governor have been planning towards this year. I talked about tightening monetary policy as a way of dealing with pressures and external shocks, as if he knew what was going to happen.
Right.
And one of those measures was the increase in the cash reserve requirements. Now, there is ease of doing business, which this government has focused on heavily as a way of, you know, encouraging investment. There is the emphasis on infrastructure. Even the Abacha loot is supposed to address the issue of infrastructure. But the issue now is whether those policies, you know, still need to shift for us to be able to get a different kind of result. But it's not as if government had not taken certain steps.
And just one last question before we go. I also wanted to ask you this potential devaluation of our currency as well. Some economists are saying that we could then potentially see an inflation increase to 16 or 17% like we did, or 16% like we did in 2016, 2017 in 2021. Is that really a possibility?
The central bank has made it their chief priority to defend the currency and not allow devaluation to happen. Governor Emefiele has said that oil prices, reserves will have to fall to about $30 billion. We're at 37 right now. Oil prices will probably have to fall into the $40 region. We're at 57 right now. So as of right now, with where we are, doesn't look like it would happen. It would have to be a major shock to push down reserves further before it happens. So as of right now, we're okay without as far as devaluation is concerned.
Thanks,
The IMF also talked about revenue.
Yes,
increase revenue.
Correct.
But we have the VAT. We have the Deep Offshore Basin Act. We have the Finance Bill. And the 2020 budget was passed early.
Right.
You know, so let's hope that maybe all of this will help in the, you know, second and third quarter of the year.
Thanks, Roses. Have a great day. And we'll go on a short break now. When we're back, we'll be joined by Aaron Akere-Jola for the latest sports headlines. Do stay with us. And welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're joined now by Arise Sports analyst Aaron Akere-Jola for the latest headlines.
Good morning, leader.
Good morning, how are you doing?
Good morning, doctor.
Well, Tonton is not here today. I know you have listened to
You can say that. You can say that again. You can say that again. I can see there's a vacuum here right now.
There's a vacuum, a void that can't be filled.
I'm just trying to imagine how the kind of compliment. Anyway, what do you have for us?
Today, let's actually tell you that Europeans' biggest competition is back, and it came with an aplomb, I must say. The UEFA Champions League round of 16, and quite emphatic, it was Liverpool against Atletico de Madrid at the Wanda Metropolitano. Remember, this was where Liverpool won the title last season, so they were going back there, hoping to have maybe more greater fortunes like they did last year when they actually won. I mean, earlier this year when they actually won the UEFA Champions League. But unfortunately for them, it was the very best of attack against the very best of defense. And yesterday, Liverpool were shocked because for the very first time, this is the second time it's happening to Jurgen Klopp, whereby his team were reduced to little or nothing. They were just moving around. They didn't even have a single shot on target. And it says so much about Diego Simeone and the kind of technical and tactical ilk this man actually possesses. As a matter of fact, people might celebrate him. He's the highest paid manager in the world as we speak right now. He walks away with £700,000 every week. So certainly, certainly the club knows his value, and they've put so much premium on him. And yesterday, he delivered a masterpiece for his team. 1-0 was how he actually ended. Saul Niguez getting the only goal in the 4th minute, and the rest of it was just quite frustrating for Liverpool. They do have a return leg in another 3 weeks' time at the Anfield, but nevertheless, people are saying this might just be quite difficult for Liverpool to climb because they're going against a team that know how to defend and can catch you on the break.
Well, I mean, I agree with all that you have said, except the part about Liverpool being reduced to little or nothing.
You know,
I think they put up a very brilliant performance.
They did.
But, you know, they just couldn't score. 8 attempts at goal, and they kept missing it. Sadio Mane was removed and substituted.
Yes.
Mohamed Salah was substituted.
Showed the frustration.
Trying every trick in the box. But as you pointed out, they were fighting against a team that had a very formidable defense. And I think that, you know, the Atletico Madrid, they played just according to the coach's instructions.
Yeah.
And the coach himself remarked upon that. But Djic, after the match, said that, you know, they got that goal in the 4th minute just by sheer luck. Because, you know, Liverpool had more ball possession.
That's not
you know,
football.
They were aggressive.
Football is not based.
Was it luck?
No, it's not. You can't put that on luck. Football is simply based on those. If you don't make a mistake, how will somebody else score? That's the beauty about football. You cannot say somebody was lucky, because the point was the ball fell on no man's land. It was just for everybody to react. The first to have reacted to the ball was the person that got the ball, and he was quite clinical to actually finish the ball. Liverpool, on the other hand, the fact that they didn't even have a single shot on target, while you had the best of Mohamed Salah, not forgetting Roberto Firmino, you had Sadio Mane, they bought Divock Origi, they bought quite a lot of players to no avail. They kept on huffing and puffing,
but
and literally.
Do you think it was a case, if it's not luck, of maybe home advantage?
Home advantage.
The reception, the home support was heavy.
Home
advantage certainly played a huge pressure. You could see Diego Simeone quite vociferous on the sidelines, always urging the fans that raise the decimal in the stadium. Frustrate Liverpool. That's what Liverpool do when they are at the Anfield. So it's going to be fire for fire when they actually go to the Anfield. But the point is this: Liverpool do know that away goals actually play a huge and pivotal role in round of 16s, especially in games that are this delicately poised. So let's see what actually happens. Liverpool knows that if Atletico Madrid are to score a goal, that will be a mountain to climb.
Well, Aaron, thank you.
Thank you very much,
I don't know why Aaron always finds the need. He must put someone down. What was the term?
I'm a merchant of truth.
And he must talk about money.
Honestly, what was the term that Aaron used to describe Liverpool? What was it? I'm going to hold on to that.
No, the point is, I'm a merchant of truth. I will always say it as it is. Without sugarcoating it. But £700,000 a week, doctor, that's a lot to think about.
It's a lot to think about.
It's a lot to think about.
I'll think about it overnight. I'll respond tomorrow.
Anyway, thank you, Aaron.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Aaron. See you tomorrow.